It's yours slightly more. Cheers, man. Nice to
Cheers to you,
Cheers.
the viewer. Welcome to Coffee and Cup Mutes with Rich Blake.
Hello.
So, welcome back to the channel. My name's Vince. I'm a composer, and this is Rich Blake, one of London's finest brass musicians, specifically a trumpet player. You got your trumpet here.
Indeed. Here we are.
I'm not exaggerating. Mostly when people say that, they're exaggerating, but you're literally one of London's best trumpet players. Certainly in my opinion, but also just by mere fact of the kind of gigs you do.
I definitely get to work with some of London's best musicians.
Tell everyone what you're doing tomorrow, for example.
Tomorrow is opening night of Aida at the Royal Opera House.
First trumpet, Royal Opera. I mean, I'm really stoked, and I was so happy to come see you the last time you were playing, and to hear those trumpet solos drifting over the Opera House and be like, "That's my boy, Rich."
Thanks.
It's lovely to follow your progression, and so good because we're here talking about the trumpet and talking about mutes specifically from the point of view of a composer who's interested in what the different mutes of a trumpet sound like, how they work. This is something that I basically, whenever this comes up and I'm writing a piece and I think that I want a kind of mute sound, generally I'll just ask you, like, you know, here's the piece, here's what I'm working on, what do you think would work? So that's probably probably the number one rule, I guess, if you're a composer, is just like ask the musician, right?
Yeah, it's always nice to have a conversation about it, and depends what you've remembered to bring with you on that particular day.
Yeah.
I've got everything today. So.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that we get some nice close-ups of all the different mutes, and you can see if there are any little, I don't know, just for pure visual enjoyment and information. But so we were saying before how, broadly speaking, well, first of all, what is a mute and what does it do and why use a mute?
Sure. Here's a trumpet, here's a mouthpiece. Essentially, you stick a mute in the end, mainly to change the sound, but to make it slightly quieter. Helps us balance with quieter woodwind, with vocalists, with with strings as well. It just sort of takes the edge off.
Yeah.
I would say that's the most straightforward way of explaining. The fun sort of begins when you think about sound quality and what particular sound you want to make, and that's when I can have the excuse to bring lots of different types of mutes. The default mute, if I'm reading a piece of music and it just says mute, or sordino is the classic in Italian, you reach for a straight mute. Now this is a metal one with a copper bottom to nerd out, which is slightly warmer than your all steel or aluminium. And essentially, if I just play a scale, it just makes things a little bit quieter and changes the sound. So with the mute,
So it's got like a really focused kind of sound to it, to me, kind of particularly in that like 1K sort of like high mids, almost nasally.
Yeah, it helps you take up less acoustic space.
Right. So it's a bit similar to like carving out the low end with EQ to make room for other instruments in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. When you're sort of louder dynamics, it gives you a bit more bite and a bit more, cut. So
can you try a louder dynamic? So
that was sort of medium-ish.
Medium,
No, a little bit louder, but also a little bit more articulated. You get that sort of color of the mute to come out.
Nice. So clear. So I don't know, pristine pops. And exactly. So it's got, I don't know, feels like it has so much space around it because it's such a kind of silver stream of sound, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It so focuses things. You've got a few different options basically within the straight mute, and that's just normally just about personal taste.
Right.
Metal one is maybe slightly more focused.
Just quickly, when you were saying before about articulation, did you mean like the attack, or like
Yes.
Yeah.
The sort of diction, the consonants on the front of it.
Yeah. It's a slightly stronger kind of transient. At least that's what I felt when you were playing just then.
Yeah.
It felt quite like pa 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 kind of.
Exactly. If it's sort of, if you're wanting to get that sort of sound, you'd have accents or staccatos, as opposed to either nothing or tenuto or slurred. And it's quite different noise. So if I was going to play, just sort of a melodic slur quietly. Compared to, same sort of line, but if I can remember it, but with staccatos or with accents.
And would you mind playing without the similar sort of phrase?
So, trying to remember this.
Yeah, the whole thing is just fatter, isn't it, without the mute, including the kind of the attack or the front of the note feels. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but
no, I mean it's definitely it's a warmer, it's a more open sound.
Yeah.
Definitely more foreground. Again, if you're orchestrating, if trumpet's a melody, or if just it's the main thing that's going on, then open's probably great.
Yeah.
You can get enough change of sound just with articulation.
It's already very versatile, isn't it? But I guess if maybe I was writing something that specifically wanted this very kind of pristine, sharp, or kind of more pointed, or just more precise kind of articulation and diction.
Yeah. You get more extremes with the mute in.
Yes. Okay. So focusing in that sense of kind of it already has a certain color or just a vibe, I guess, that may work along with in tandem with the musical material or something.
Exactly. I mean, if I'm thinking about sort of more articulate, more sort of pointed writing, check out sort of Stravinsky, Petrushka, or the Rite of Spring for something like that. And he uses both open trumpets and muted.
Right.
Again, to get different levels of sort of edge and bite.
And that's more of a thing in later classical music, I'm guessing, historically, or have mutes been around since kind of Baroque days? I don't know.
There were some early mutes. It got slightly complicated. The early mutes that I've played, they actually changed the pitch. So we
confusing.
I go a bit sharp with most mutes in,
right.
But I think they're out by about a semitone.
Oh wow!
Because it's literally just sort of a chunk of wood.
Yeah.
There are some earlier ones. I can't remember examples off the top of my head, but there are a few earlier ones. That's more in terms of practicalities of just trying to not drown out sort of a few string players.
Yeah. I
rather
see.
Than changing of the color.
Okay. Yeah. When I think of the musical associations of the sound of the mute, it makes me think of, that general tendency in the Romantic and late Romantic era to kind of get even more rich with all of the kind of possible tones and textures, and the sort of addition of the muted sound, I don't know, feels is associated with that in my mind. It's sort of, and I guess now we're at the kind of the ultimate point of that, where it's we have so many options when it comes to tone colours and stuff. As a composer, it's almost a bit overwhelming.
Yes, definitely.
But anyway, let's keep exploring.
Sure. Yes, so that you had both straight mutes there. I've got another one which is for me sort of halfway in the middle, which is from Hungary, Tattoo Mutes, which is a 3D printed one. Which for me I can do. It's great on the quiet stuff. It's
plastic,
3D printed.
Nice.
Super light. So you can get that sort of light, lyrical style. Can't totally remember the notes, but that's Debussy-esque. But it'll also still take the punch. Wrong bit, sorry, John. But so it'll do both ends of the spectrum.
Interesting. That I don't know whether, again, it's just my imagination knowing that it's plastic, not metallic.
Yeah.
But it did have slightly less of a metallic ring to it, I think.
Yeah. It doesn't maybe project quite as well. I find that quite useful sometimes if you need to blend rather than stick out.
Yeah. Would you mind just switching, sorry to make you keep switching.
No, that's okay.
Maybe doing another quick A-B between the first one and the second one.
So,
The
metal mute, it definitely carries better. And if I play, similarly with the plastic.
Wow.
Just a different character.
Yeah, a little bit more, I don't know, a little drier or something, or like, there was certainly a slight resonance to the metal one, I think.
Yeah.
Bit less, slightly less high-end on this one, maybe. But yeah, it's hard to sum it up fully, it's just a different character.
Yeah, and taste comes into this so much.
Yeah.
Which is why you'd always ask the player as to what they particularly like.
Yeah, okay.
So other options.
So these are all straight mutes?
Those three were, all straight mutes, or just a mute.
Right. So then now do we start getting into the slightly more sort of special effects type of mutes? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I'll go for the most obvious sort of Miles Davis sound.
Mm-hmm.
So Harmon Mute without stem.
Okay. We'll do a quick close-up of the stem mechanism, I guess, so you can see how it all fits together. But...
So... Lovely noise.
Yeah.
If you really want that sort of Miles sound, it's this, but it's close mic'd.
Right.
So you get that sort of proximity effect.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the really high end and you get the depth of the sort of bass.
How much power were you putting behind the notes there? Like
not a huge amount. It's louder. Somewhere with the previous.
Yeah, so actually at the softer dynamic you can get quite a warm sound.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think of Harmon Mutes as being a warm thing, but I guess because you have there's some weird extra bottom end thing going on, which I can hear just here. I guess in the context of an ensemble, that might get lost a little bit.
A little bit. I think it also is part of what helps things carry in a larger room, in a concert hall, something like that.
Right.
I think if you can play with a bit more warmth and depth, that helps projection.
Interesting. Yeah. Could you play like super quietly?
Yeah.
I'm quite curious to hear that sound. Because I always, when I think of Harmon Mute, I just think of it like sort of as a monodynamic. I just kind of categorize it as the buzzy thing. I guess that's the Miles Davis thing. It's just like a general like MF kind of.
Yeah. Sort of on or off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like really quiet trumpet is beautiful and actually quite underused. It's one of my favorite sounds, definitely, especially if you can get two or three together. Yeah. You get the warmer, darker end of things, and it just sounds glorious. Just to show off the trumpet without the mute, I'll give you again that same sort of line.
You were telling me before about how this is a trumpet that's more geared towards classical playing. And so part of what that means is that it's got, I think you said, a bit more of a core to the sound.
Exactly. So I'm, for trumpet nerds, this is just a Bach 37, your sort of standard, sorry Yamaha, but your most used trumpet probably in the world. But I'm pairing it with this sort of a slightly deeper mouthpiece that sort of helps with the sort of the classical, slightly warmer tone.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of bass. I was like an unexpectedly large amount of bass.
Yeah.
Like, again, maybe it's just hearing it in solo. I'm so used to thinking of it as an ensemble instrumental, just like in an orchestral context where most of what you hear is the brightness kind of piercing through the strings or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it's kind of getting me excited about all the possibilities of hearing it as a solo instrument and really hearing the fullness of the sound, not just the bright top end. You know?
It really can be a beautiful melodic sound.
Mm.
And actually, like again, as I said, with sort of 2 or 3, it's a lovely sort of accompanying choir. So if you put that behind a flute or a voice or anything like that, it's a really lovely.
Oh, it's a blending instrument. It was
Yeah.
a kind of like a
cushion.
cushion. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Is that, and do you get to do that much in an orchestral context?
Yeah, bits and pieces.
Thing? Yeah.
It's particularly
You're not just sort of sitting there waiting for your big fanfare, but you are actually there, sort of supporting other instruments.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff where we're just coasting really and trying to stay within the texture.
Yeah.
And quite often it's normally at the end of the show when you're a bit tired and you don't particularly want to play quietly. That's normally the point where they really go for sort of a hushed tone. Very end of Aida is exactly like this, sort of spoiler, but it's all gone wrong and everyone's about to die. There's a quiet sort of trombone and hushed trumpet chorale, and it's really effective, and it's a sound in that opera. It's something that you haven't really heard much throughout. So then it's suddenly this new trick at the very end, and it's sort of a certain solemnity to it.
I think that feels like part of why I wanted to ask you to do this kind of demo and to just to sit and listen to you play stuff, is because it's like, to find those like specific sounds that maybe you don't always hear in the kind of like the most sort of broad use case type of trumpet.
Sort of we get stereotyped.
Yeah,
we definitely get stereotyped.
Every instrument gets stereotyped, doesn't it? It's like what you were saying about harpists. Just always doing glisses, or flutes probably always doing trills and kind of. I mean, I know that I'm guilty of just writing. It's like, little fluffy trill thing. I'll just put that in the clarinets and the flutes, and probably get sick of it. But yeah, I mean, I guess another way of putting it would be that each family of instruments sort of excels at a particular thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
And, but then there's something. I mean, it's part of the reason I love instruments that fall in between the categories, a bit like flugelhorns or violas or things where Barry sax is another one where especially as a solo instrument, there's like just such a treasure trove of sounds that you wouldn't normally hear.
For me, it's also interesting the different roles the trumpet can play in different ensembles. For me, in an orchestra, I have to play differently because I'm blending with string players and woodwinds and clarinets and oboes and that sort of thing. But in a big band, it's a different group of instruments, so I'm matching trombones and saxophones and electric guitars. So you use different extremes of the instrument.
And maybe a different instrument as well.
Yes, I use definitely a smaller mouthpiece, or I've got a smaller bore instrument over there, which is quite fun.
Should we crack on with the music? I thought this was going to be a really tight 10-minute video, but maybe it's going to be a more rambling
I never
one.
played you the quiet Harmon thing, so I'll do that before I forget. One of the most embarrassing things to happen is for your mute to fall out mid-phrase.
I thought it was going to be that it gets stuck.
It can occasionally do, but the bigger issue is that it falls out because it suddenly gets a lot louder and everyone...
And a big clatter,
Yeah, exactly. It bounces down the stage or whatever. Very different sort of noise. With the Harmon, the other options include the stem.
Right.
Which is odd.
Yeah.
And basically you can have the stem full out. There's far too many different options. You can have sort of halfway or full in. And then the added fun of that you can cover the opening of the sort of stem with your hand, and then you can sort of do the wah wah effects, which is what everyone loves. I mean, you could do a lot more than that, but
actually, I'd never really considered writing a kind of filter sweep, essentially, of like using that almost like a crescendo over the course of a phrase might be quite an interesting thing with like a whole ensemble.
Yeah, it works trombones as well, definitely. Yeah. It's slightly harder to hold, but...
Is that a thing that people do in big band arranging?
Yeah, a little bit, and I'm sort of more familiar with it happening in sort of contemporary classical music. Yeah, people do, and especially if you get a whole ensemble sort of, opening and closing at the same time, and then like.
And does that actually sound good, or is it just one of those things that contemporary classical composers do that they think it's cool?
It sounds
you
different.
don't have to name any names. But...
I guess it depends what you're combining it with. If it's just sort of composing by numbers, that it's a bit boring. But there are some really interesting effects.
That's an interesting point, because I guess there's a temptation to just do weird stuff for the sake of doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
So that
there is a place for that. But, I guess on a practical issue, the nice thing about particularly a Harmon with the stem, you can play quite forcefully and quite sort of excitedly, but if you're closed, it's not going to wipe out anyone else. It'll still bounce. So if I'm...
Yeah, there's a lot of grit and a lot of aggression.
Yeah, but you could probably still be able to hear...
Yeah, and I'm not having my head blown off.
If I did that, if I sort of played with the same energy and aggression without a mute in, or even just without my hands, it's amazing what sort of difference that can make.
That's really interesting. To me, now we're starting to get into the realms of mutes as a kind of way of distorting the sound a bit, or like kind of bringing in that kind of contained aggression in a way that, like you say, is actually not going to overpower the whole forces as well. That maybe that's a way to do something, with a sort of that kind of energy, that intensity.
Exactly. That you can hear. Musically, I think you can hear the energy even if it's sort of turned down, and essentially you can turn you down, but you can still sort of give it plenty of...
Yeah. Very interesting. There's something about the fact that it's focused and it's breaking up a bit. Like, I guess it feels very similar to like guitar amplifiers, where it's like often quite a constrained frequency range in a way that like really just feels really crisp and satisfying, but it's like this... You have this double thing of it being like really crazy, but also very contained at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically an acoustic pedal board.
Right. Nice. Cool. Shall we move on to the next one?
So cup, more obviously, like the Harmon, you're straight into just sort of a jazz world.
Nice.
Yeah.
Probably my favourite mute.
It's
probably the one that I ask you to use most often, right?
Yeah.
Just instant. Yeah. Instant.
Smile.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fun to play with as well. It sort of, it takes the edge off. It means you can play freely without being too scared most of the time, which is nice. It helps with balance.
It's got a certain dusky quality to it, which I like.
Yeah.
Kind of just makes me think of an old jazz man. Like Clark Terry or something like that.
Yeah, if I could sell my Clark, then that would be... Yeah.
Does he actually use cut mute a lot? I guess I think of him more actually as having just an open sound. But...
Yeah, he was famous sort of to swapping between trumpet and flugelhorn quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And Harmon definitely with the trumpet, but... actually, I think he was a session player as well as a sideman and a leader, so I'm sure he used everything.
Cut mute combined with a flute, and I just feel like we're instant Sammy Nestico vibes.
Yeah, Sammy, Quincy, all of that.
Can you play a bit more? Like,
yeah,
maybe something less bebop-y, I don't know. And then if we push the volume a little bit more. Yeah.
It's a great noise.
Is it me, or with the staccato notes, are you getting a bit of like, I think you referred to it as splat before,
Yeah. If I do a row of notes and sort of get a bit more articulated and louder. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Yeah, that's that again is like distortion, isn't it? Or it's like saturation or something. It's kind of...
It probably is literally lopping the top off the waveform.
Right.
But it's the waveform inside the trumpet before it gets out into the world.
So to me, what I'm hearing is it makes it chunkier, the sound of the, rather than but you kind of get this clap starts to break up a bit.
Compressed.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Sort of again, sort of acoustic compression maybe. I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah.
Come up with that.
It should be. Okay, cool. That's lovely.
Yeah, Cop's awesome, and yeah, it's a great noise.
I thought I wasn't going to show any bias towards the mutes, but
everyone's got their favourite.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Final two can be sort of used together.
That looks like something that you'd use to clean the kitchen sink.
That's if you really want to get a cheap plunger mute, that's where you buy it.
Yeah.
The first one I ever owned was plunger with the wooden bit taken out of it. This is a sort of actual sort of designed and made East Chicago, Humsonburg.
Hey, nice.
Good trick actually. Again, if you're sort of new to this world, I didn't know this before, but there's a certain sound in, I think it's sort of Ellington area, of a really super tight plunger.
Oh.
Everyone sort of knows the sort of the growling wah wah stuff, but super tight is another different noise. And basically, you can't do it unless you've drilled a hole in it.
Ah, because otherwise, you need somehow the air to escape.
Yeah, if I cover the holes, it's hilarious. You just can't. You can't really get any actual notes.
Okay.
But yeah, with
tiny bit of air let through with the holes.
Let through.
Loads of kind of mid and bass tones and quite like a full sound, but then also the bright buzzy. It's like a little sprinkling of. It's like a delicious caramel pudding. With maybe I'm just looking at the shape of this thing and dreaming about food. But anyway, yeah, that's great. And then what? And then you mentioned the more traditional kind of growling open and closed kind of dynamic thing. Yeah.
Again, if I do it sort of slowly for the camera.
Do you want to try profile?
Straight into your ear. Sorry.
Yeah. So there, unlike when you were you had your fingers on and off the Harmon stem.
Yes.
This is like you're playing with open and muted, and so you're kind of. That's the threshold you're playing with, like a more natural, open, full sound.
Exactly.
And a kind of rounded and slightly buzzy muted sound.
Yeah, if you get sort of too closed, it sort of stops working. So it's generally been sort of between about, I don't know, what's that, sort of 10 degrees and then fully sort of open. And yeah, you can get sort of really, really amazing sort of vocal effects.
Yeah.
I'm not a total expert on this. I think Cootie Williams, I think, who's sort of bassy band. He was like, he was like the growl and plunger guy.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just fun.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I mean that's great. If I got a brief in that was like, give me that sound. But it's very specific, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, totally.
So I'm trying to think if, like, say if I was in just a more scoring context, just searching for colours in a more abstract way without thinking less in terms of a strict genre, like, what kind of connections I would make,
It's maybe slightly too characterful. This, for me, throws me instantly into big band or James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond, yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a good trick.
Like, so how do you, first of all, do you know the growl thing you were doing?
Yes.
Where is that coming from? Is that a flutter tongue? Is that a back of the throat thing?
Depends on what you can physically do. I can roll my R's, so I'm just.
So if you do, could you do like a sustained rolling your R's growl, and you know, and do the plunger thing, but in a less idiomatically jazz way? Is that possible?
Yeah, you can sort of do slower movements.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, so to me that starts to evoke like almost like mechanical kind of, slightly eerily, like
Sort of robotic or
machine
something.
kind of robotic-y things maybe, or
like it's particularly exciting sort of if you put a crescendo through it as well.
mm,
But again, then it sort of does get to be a bit more Bond-like.
yeah.
That sort of
Mm.
that end of things.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing of essentially muffling the sound a bit. There's no reason that has to be associated with just a jazz vocalization thing. I guess this is where like just me creating some kind of piece that deliberately played with that filtering effect in a musical way, but like deliberately didn't make it sound like jazz. Like I'd need to sort of place that in a musical context to see whether that would be worth it.
Yeah, there could be definitely something interesting of sort of making people play incredibly classical phrasing, but
yeah, exactly.
sort of with jazz instruments.
Yeah, maybe timing wise, just very straight. Yeah.
And sometimes that can be really lame, but sometimes that can be really effective.
There's something almost uncanny about the filtering thing. Like, for instance, it makes me think of like ambient music, where and droney kind of things, where you're listening to, where it's like more about the transformation of a single tone than it is about the melody going somewhere.
Yeah.
So maybe it would work in a context where you're playing like something that's a bit more paddy.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe you voiced a chord and you had different notes in the chord kind of shade in and out.
Yeah. That would definitely work. Maybe. Especially again, if you had a group of trumpets, you could change it different times to bring out different.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the image of it as well because it almost becomes like a bit of a dance.
Yeah.
Like a bit of a choreo between, because you'd have to kind of try and time it and feel it with the other.
Oh, definitely. And in terms of recording technique, you can also combine it with leaning to and from the mic.
Okay.
Again, if I'm,
yeah.
So basically, as I open up, it'll get louder, but you could probably counterbalance that with leaning away from the mic.
Right.
So if I try and if I start relatively close, but start close to the mic and then move away, it should sort of balance things out. So. The final one, which we hadn't mentioned, is barely used, but it's a Pixie, and that combines with the Plunger. So Pixie on its own is sort of very tight. It sounds more like a straight. But again, it's a way to do the sort of Plunger growling thing, but be slightly sort of more delicate.
Anyone would think you're a jazzer. What are you doing? Don't let your LSO buddies hear you play that kind of stuff. Marvellous. So should we move on to... We've got Bucket there.
Oh yeah.
Is that the last one?
Bucket's the last one.
Brilliant.
Bucket is basically same sort of thing. Just takes the edge off it. So it makes it... Quite often it's used if you don't have time to get the flugelhorn out.
Okay.
But to be honest, if you're working with a more sort of classical section, they can sound flugelhorn-ish if you just ask them to play quietly.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Lovely. So I have a quick question actually in terms of practicalities. How quickly can you remove and put on these mutes? Because presumably you're usually doing it mid-song, mid-track. Yeah.
It's you get practice with it. Definitely some shows you've got to get used to quite quick changes.
Normally you'll have them on the floor.
Or even if you're there for if people are doing a show for a while, they'll have sort of trays, or you can get holders.
Okay.
You can probably change it pretty quick, sort of.
So yeah, like
say you have cup in your lap like that.
Yeah. Can you demo a change from I don't know, say from open to muted?
Open to muted.
Yeah.
Normally fine because you can play one-handed.
Ah, yeah.
And then hold.
That's a good point. Yeah. So basically, as a composer, you don't want to be writing a stream of semiquavers and then halfway through it go, because you still need a moment to position it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I guess if it's more of an effect, you don't need to get it correct. Then
Yeah.
that'll be fine. But yeah, if you want a clean line, give us a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess like at least a couple of seconds, basically.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And then are there certain mutes that are harder to fit than others?
Harmon's the one that tends to fall out for me. Just
Right.
it's a bit heavier.
Oh yeah. Okay. I noticed you were breathing on it a bit. Was that presumably?
Yes, you sort of get a bit of condensation on the inside of the bell, and it helps it grip.
Right.
So you can spray it or lick it if you're feeling
Okay.
particularly bold. But,
Yeah.
So Harmon's probably the trigger, especially if you want any of the wah-wah mutes, that'll sort of wah-wah effects, that'll take a little bit longer to get into place.
Okay.
Because you need to get the mute tight and get your hand sort of out the front.
Okay. Any other sort of like practical constraints or things to think about in writing for mutes?
Extreme range, both high and low, becomes problematic because every mute is sticking something in the airstream, in the instrument.
Yeah.
There's always some hilarious effects. I think down the very bottom of the cup, my notes don't really exist down there. So open.
Oh, interesting.
It sort of does strange things to the physics.
What note was that?
That was a
The lowest one.
concert E, so R F sharp. It's a
Right.
B flat trumpet.
Right.
And yeah, similarly, extreme ranges, tuning gets worse and accuracy gets a lot harder.
Okay. That's really useful to know.
Yeah.
But even so, it's still a very wide range of pitches.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
And to us, like, you could be very welcome to write up there. It just might take a little bit more time to get the perfect take, or to rehearse it. We like to be challenged as trumpet players, but also be patient with us if it takes a little while to get it right.
I was just thinking, because we rushed the bucket mute a little bit, I wonder if we could go back and if you're happy, just try a little bit of louder playing on that. And
Yep.
I'm just curious to know whether the sound breaks up much or whether it stays quite pure as you were playing just then.
I don't think so, because essentially it's just a sponge.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really designed to just soak up and just prevent all those.
So it's literally...
I can confirm that it's a sponge.
That looks terrible, but there you are. Louder down, so...
Okay.
It still rounds things off quite a lot. Like you'll get a bit of splat anyway with any trumpet, I guess, at volumes, but they're most useful taking a sort of a medium volume down to something a bit more subtle and easily blended, but without stressing your players out.
Right. Interesting. So kind of an alternative if you've got like long periods of music that are sort of piano and you want it to sound really even and smooth.
Exactly.
Like on a normal, without the mute, it might be a bit hard to control consistently over a long period of time.
Could get lonely, yes.
Right. Okay.
Again, especially if it's a long recording session, or rehearsal, or show, or whatever.
That's interesting. I've never considered that before.
It sort of depends of the extremes of what you're being asked to do that day.
Yeah.
It's more prevalent in big band writing because you're asked for more extremes of sort of loud and high. So therefore the low and quiet is harder work.
Right.
While maybe within some classical things you don't have to maybe play as high or as sort of raucously. So therefore then the sort of the warmer sort of purer sound is easier to get to because the sort of the face is a bit fresher.
It actually caught me off guard how lush the sound of the bucket is. Maybe it's because the sample that I have of a bucket trumpet isn't that great or that nice sounding to me. So it's not something that I've really used a lot because I write so much with samples and I'm kind of testing out musical ideas using samples.
Yeah. It's probably the least used of all the mutes, to be fair. But
it just sounds like a very nice kind of flugelhornish or just very mellow trumpet tone. I wouldn't think muted.
Yeah.
I just think like buttery, smooth.
It's quite nice if perhaps if you didn't have access to a French horn section,
Mm.
but you wanted that sort of warmth behind a string tune,
Mm.
that would be quite a nice way to get that sort of pad feeling.
Yeah.
You can sort of you can add to the sound, but you're not going to steal the limelight too much, because again, it's in terms of EQ wise, you're just rounding things off.
Mm. Rounding things off, but in such a much nicer way than if you did actually EQ it.
Yes.
You know, like EQ is very brutal and kind of, it's just literally shaving away, it's just taking it all mathematically down.
Mm.
Whereas what that's doing is sculpting it more.
Yeah.
It's leaving some of the, I'm still getting all the lovely breathiness, I'm still getting a little bit of the highs and the kind of the focus of the top end, but like it's kind of becoming much fatter and smoother and kind of...
The player can also adapt to that as well. That's the nice thing about doing things at source rather than, I guess, creating them in post. You can, I'm adapting to how I'm playing depending on the sound that I'm making. We were talking earlier about recording with reverb. I always like having a bit of reverb in the can so I can hear what's going on. Similarly, if I know if it was sounding a bit weedy, I'd play a bit louder or something like that. Same sort of thing with the bucket.
I guess again it reminds me of this issue of like trying to, how probably playing softly is going to change a lot more than the dynamic, if you know what I mean. Like you were saying, it might get a bit lonely down there. Like I feel like if you, like my experience playing sax a bit, like if you're kind of on the edge of the tone actually petering out, you're bringing a whole sort of atmosphere and vibe to the thing that you're playing, you know, intentionally or not. So yeah, just that idea that maybe I could write something that is a bit more agile and a bit more kind of comfortable.
Yes.
Just happens to be at a lower dynamic.
Agile is a good word to throw in there because it's trickier to fly around the instrument while keeping the sort of lid on dynamics. But if you stick a mute in, we can sort of blow a bit more freely.
And kind of the character of a musician who's comfortable kind of comes through, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, actually, sort of, if you're trying to do sort of a florid, sort of John Williams sort of woodwind sort of. That's a lot easier with a mute in rather than me trying to play a pianissimo.
Yeah. Oh, I want to write something like that now. That's lovely. Yeah, agile, soft, warm, buttery trumpet.
Tasty words.
Tasty words from a tasty man. Wait, yeah. No, I wasn't sure if I was speaking about you or about myself then, but no, anyway. How to round these things off. Thank you very much for talking about the mutes of the trumpet.
Anytime.
For demoing lots of stuff, and I hope this was useful to somebody.
Get in touch, comment, always happy to answer more questions.
Yeah, great, thank you, appreciate that. Cool, all right, cheers.
You too.